They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Welcome into the program, everyone. I am Lou Ruggieri. That is Jose Ortiz. And this is the Benchwarmerz podcast. Wherever, whenever, and however you happen to be listening, we appreciate you taking some time out of your day or week or month or life to spend it with us. We are hopefully going to make it worth your while. Season 2, episode 10 in full effect. You can go back and listen to all of our shows, iHeartRadio podcasts, Amazon podcasts, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, at the Benchwarmerz podcast, at the BW Pod on Twitter, or go to the almost famous thebenchwarmers.com, Benchwarmers with a Z, to see all of our news, notes, and articles, and you can access the show from there as well. This show, we have quite a lot to get to. A little bit later, we have our weekly NFL football fix. PFF has listed the top 50 players right now, and we're going to kind of touch on some of those. Not all of them, obviously, because we don't work for PFF, but interesting nonetheless, so we'll go through and give some opinions on those things. Coming up in a little bit, we have to touch on the NBA Conference Finals. Atlanta going down 1-2 to the Bucks. Phoenix playing, actually, full disclosure, playing as we speak, Game 5. They're up 3-1, so this could be the closeout game. So we're going to save that for a little bit to kind of get a better idea of where that game is going, to kind of give more insight and opinion that way. But first, Jose, we have a lot to talk about. There's some news in NBA-related news that kind of will lead us into that finals talk in a bit. And first and foremost, the NBA has announced their Olympic team, their starters for the Olympic roster. And before we even get into the roster, I was kind of curious. Outside of basketball, which I think we would both choose, if you had to pick an event or a sport that you could be an Olympian in, what would you want to be? If you could, and assuming you'd be good, you have a chance to win a gold medal, what would you want to be known for?
I'd want to be in the 100-meter, like the 100-meter dash. Like I'd want to be the world's fastest man. Like that would be, to me,
that's a good one.
Either that one or the decathlon, where you're the greatest athlete in the world or something, as they call you if you win all the events. That's probably where I land. It's
pretty good. It's pretty good. I forgot about this. Yeah, sprinting that might be the winner there. I think outside of that, I was always fascinated by the male gymnasts.
Oh my gosh, they're in such great shape.
Just the strength, just to be able to do the rings the way that they can do them. I was always blown away by the amount of strength. I even tried that a couple times, and I was like, okay, well, I thought I was strong. Nope. It's just.
You're also, in fairness, probably about 50 to 60 pounds heavier, if not more, than a lot of these guys too.
Yeah, and strangely, it's one of the few times I can say I might be a little tall for something.
Yeah,
which is not a thing I get to say very often in life, which makes me sad. But yeah, it's one of those two things. I think the sprinting is the right answer, but aside from that, I always thought the rings would be very interesting. But anyway, NBA roster. Obviously, if we could include NBA in that, I would rather be a gold medalist in the basketball dream team. For 2021, this is your starting lineup. Well, not starting lineup, but this is your rotations of your starting lineup. This is the roster, I should say. Bam Adebayo, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Jeremy Grant from the Pistons, Draymond Green, somewhat surprising, Drew Holiday, Zach LaVine, Damian Lillard, Kevin Love, Chris Middleton, and Jason Tatum. Is the biggest no-brainer and biggest surprise of that list for you?
I guess the biggest no-brainer is Kevin Durant. I mean, we both said he's the best player in the game. I'm surprised that he's even playing, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Being that he's already got 2 gold medals. And, I want to say he's injury prone or anything, but he has a history of injuries and seems like he seems like at the end of the season he needed some rest. Yeah. So for him to go straight to the Olympics seems weird to me. But I mean, like I said, the biggest head scratcher, that's a tough one. I probably would, I feel bad, but I probably would say Drew Holiday. I don't know. I look at or Kevin Love, one of those two. It just doesn't feel like it. Like these are, I don't even know if they're top 20 NBA players. So are they? Is Drew Holiday a top 25 NBA player? I'm not sure. So it seems weird that he would be, but here we are.
He seems a bit streaky. Kevin Love was interesting.
Yeah.
He didn't really. I mean, we were talking about this a little off the air as far as if he's playing center. I mean, there's not a lot of potential candidates because most of the great centers are foreign born. Greek Freak obviously comes to mind, but he's Greek, obviously. Jokic, not American. Even Rudy Gobert, not, he's French. So who's left? I mean, there's not a lot of Anthony Davis. He declined to try out. I mean, for the 2020-2021 season, Kevin Love averaged 12.2 points a game, 7.4 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. I mean, that, I guess he's he's a role player. I did think that I thought it was interesting that Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton both made the team. I thought that was a little curious. Chris Middleton, I think, especially after the last game that he played, I think certainly made a case for himself. I am confused a little about Drew Holiday. It seems like you could have fit someone else in there that maybe would have been a little more impressive, but
this is interesting how far we've come from the original Dream Team. And I don't want to compare or anything, but just I don't even know who's starting center on it. Like, I'm looking at the roster, I'm like, is Bam Adebayo the starting center? Like, I don't even know who the starting center is. It's either Bam Adebayo or Kevin Love.
Yeah.
And obviously the original Dream Team had Patrick Ewing and David Robinson. It was just like, it was just, and even the second Dream Team had I believe Shaq and Hakeem Olajuwon on it. Yeah. So it's just weird to me.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Bam, I think, is definitely the starting center there, but aside from Kevin Durant, I think Damian Lillard is the most no-brainer of the bunch. I think he's the guy you want on your team. I feel like he's a great representative of the attitude that we tend to bring. Steph Curry declined, LeBron declined, Anthony Davis declined. I mean, there's a list of people that said no to this.
Jimmy Butler also declined.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler and there was somebody else.
Donovan Mitchell, Chris Paul.
Yeah.
Steph Curry and James Harden as well.
Harden, that's who I was thinking of.
I was trying to find the name. I was like, there's someone in here.
Yeah. Yeah, Harden is the one that I think it's probably good. I mean, I think it might have been good for him to maybe try to get in shape in the offseason because he seemed like he kind of came into the last season a little bit out of shape in sort of a protest against being on the Houston Rockets. But the other one, Draymond Green, I thought was interesting. I guess, I don't know, maybe I just forgot about Draymond Green. I don't know what, he just doesn't strike me.
It's the demand for centers. There's no size in the NBA.
Yeah.
All the skill players are basically guards and forwards now.
Right.
So.
Yeah, very interesting. But we'll see. I think it's enough to win a gold, but I mean, there's going to be some good competition out there, I think. Apparently the Australian team is supposed to be really good.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't wait to actually. I'm actually kind of excited to watch the Olympics. I'm not normally a big Olympics guy, but I don't know. I feel like this year I may take some time and just watch some of the events.
In other news, the NBA draft lottery happened, if you weren't paying attention. It was a little bit, I thought, I watched part of it, and I thought it was a little hokey and kind of interested. Like, they had representatives from each team, and they were just sitting in front of a camera, just pretending to be excited. I mean, I don't know. It just seemed very, very forced and contrived. But that's my own personal opinion. As far as the first round goes, the order: Detroit won the lottery, followed by Houston, Cleveland, Toronto, Orlando, OKC. Golden State comes in at number 7 from Minnesota. Orlando comes in at 8 from Chicago. Sacramento, New Orleans, Charlotte, San Antonio, Indiana, Golden State again at 14, and then Washington at 15. As far as this goes, it just begs the question because I feel like Detroit's always in the top of the lottery. It just does the lottery work? I don't know if it's working. It just feels like most of these teams we've seen at the top of this lottery system for years now, and it's just I don't know if it's working.
Well, I mean, that just speaks to the level of like how difficult it is to get a great player. It's you get the number 1 pick. You can pick any player in the league. It was 1 year Kawhi Leonard's like, I think he was the number 14 pick. You can scout guys, you can look at guys. You just don't always get the franchise player. And then also from year to year, there's not always a LeBron James or a Luka Doncic or, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
There's not always this game-changing player. I'm trying to think of who's the guy that who did Jordan pick number one? Why can't I remember?
LaMelo Ball.
No, not him. No, but the years back, there was oh my gosh when he was with the Washington Wizards.
Wow, I don't remember that actually.
I'm gonna look it up right now. But it was just it's like. But my point is that it's the same thing in the NFL. That's why people throw away draft picks to get players because you just don't know.
But it does beg the question though that is it the lack of talent or is it just it's the fact that some of these teams are just bad at drafting. I mean, a lot like the NFL. I mean, it just seems like whoever's in charge of making that final decision for some of these teams, like Sacramento Kings, they're like the Cleveland Browns, before 2 years ago. It's just they just have this knack for just finding the banana peel in the draft, and I feel like we should just give it to that, after if you've been bad for so long. I mean, the Pistons have been bad too, so I guess they deserve it. But I feel like at this point, just give the Kings, the entire first round and just let them deal with it. It's so frustrating to see them just be so bad here, and it's not good for the game either. It's bad, if they're not going to ever make television, they probably don't even make it in their own local market half the time.
The player I was thinking about was Kwame Brown.
Kwame Brown, that's right.
Kwame Brown.
That's right.
Take number one in the 2001 draft, a long time ago. But if you just look at the NBA draft and, just through the years, look at the top 10 players, but it's actually very similar to the NFL. It's hard. It's not an exact science. And it's even harder in the NBA, I believe, because now that there's the one and done, you don't really get a chance to get an extended look at a lot of these guys, where you don't get to see a Grant Hill for 3 years at Duke, or fill in the blank, Tim Duncan for 4 years at Wake Forest. Like you just don't get to see these play, or Jordan for that matter, for 3 years at North Carolina. You get one look at these guys, and then they go to the NBA, and either they work or they don't, and seems like it's very difficult, and if you already have a star, you're in much better position than the team that has a number one pick.
Yeah, I think, but I think it's more of an art than a science, which is always interesting. I think that out of all of these, the top 15, 20 teams, I think Golden State obviously is looking the most dangerous because they have the 7th pick from Minnesota, and then they have the 14th pick, and presumably they're going to be getting Klay Thompson back. I mean, hopefully he plays more than just a couple preseason games this year. But I mean, that team with Wiseman and Wiggins, I mean, they have potential if they can add a couple good role players with this draft. I think Golden State could be a really, really, really dangerous team.
Golden State, and another team I was looking at is Toronto, being that they have the number 4 pick. I think Luka Doncic was the number 4 pick, right? Like if you can get a guy who's a game changer at that position, at that spot, you have a chance to really make a jump. And Golden State having 2 picks inside the top 15, that's very frightening. Very frightening. The whole Western Conference is going to be ridiculous next season. It's going to be ridiculous.
So in other news, and the last thing, this is it was kind of skews negative a little bit, but I thought it was worth talking about. Scottie Pippen had an interview with GQ magazine, and you can go to their website and check it out. And it's I mean, Scotty's got a lot to say. I'll give him credit. He was not super verbal when he was on the Bulls, but since then he's been talking, and people are starting to take notice. Scottie, he has a new bourbon out, which he's promoting. Which, I mean, take that for what it is. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure it's fine. But he had a lot of things to say about Kevin Durant. He took some shots at Kevin Durant, just saying he needs to. Basically, he's not a team player, and I'm paraphrasing, but he's not a team player, and he's not the same kind of player as LeBron is, which I mean I think is true. KD kind of clapped back at Scottie and
of course
called him out, of course, because Kevin Durant's very sensitive.
You can't say anything about Kevin Durant without him clapping back at you. May as well be Donald Trump. No, I shouldn't say that. Never mind.
No, he's nowhere near that. But
no, I know. This is so funny.
The big thing is, so the interviewer goes back in that sort of infamous scene from The Last Dance that we all saw, And he asks, going back to that game, you took yourself out of the 94 playoff game with 1.8 seconds. And he asks what happened. And Scottie's reply is somewhat curious. He said, I don't think it's a mystery. You need to read between the fine lines. It was my first year playing without Michael. Why wouldn't I be taking that last shot? I've been through all the ups and downs, the battles with the Pistons. Now you're going to insult me and take me out. I thought it was a pretty low blow. I felt like it was an opportunity to give Kukoc a rise. It was a racial move to give him a rise. After all I've been through with this organization, you're going to tell me to take the ball out and throw it to Tony Kukoc. You're insulting me. That's how I felt. So essentially, it sounds like Scottie Pippen's calling Phil Jackson racist. And I don't know. It just...
And then he doubled down on it too by saying that he was he was trying to expose Kobe Bryant as well. So I'm agreeing with you. Just following what you said.
Yeah.
Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to add to your point.
No, that was the extent of it. It's just I feel like Scottie, you're better than this. I mean, obviously, he's a little more sensitive, and I think we saw in that entire year that Scottie's not really Batman. He's the best Robin of all time. But that team was good, but I feel like they were still kind of playing with the ghost of Michael Jordan pushing them. And I don't know. I didn't like how this came across. It was very, very. It felt very unnecessary.
Yeah. Real quick, Durant, I was definitely fair. I think it was a fair criticism of Durant, not to say that he's a bad player or something. He's not a guy who looks to pass. LeBron is. That's it. It's just, that's not the player he is. Durant's a shooter. That's what he does. But as far as I'm going to say something that is probably not going to be popular. I absolutely hate when people pull the race card for stupid things like this, right? It's one thing that, I don't even want to, I don't want to say, give an example of what's an acceptable race card, whatever, fine.
Yeah.
I'm sure maybe this has happened. Maybe there's some truth to it, but you and I grew up watching that team. You mean to tell me that it's outlandish that when you're down by 2 points with 1.8 seconds left, that you ask Tony Kukoc to take the 3-point shot instead of Scottie Pippen? Does anyone think of Scottie Pippen as a 3-point shooter? No. He's a guy who can hit a three, right?
He was a scorer. He wasn't a shooter.
Yeah. Tony Kukoc was definitely, at least my recollection of it, was definitely a better 3-point shooter. Maybe you got your pride hurt or something, but to call Phil Jackson racist because you didn't get the last shot is really, really annoying to me. It can't just be, oh, this was a better play. This coach who won 11 NBA championships decided that this was the better play. And guess what? Tony Kukoc hit the shot.
Right. I mean, that to me is exactly why this shouldn't even be a thing. If Kukoc missed that shot, then I feel like Scottie, you could at least hear him out. But the fact of the matter is, the shot, it worked. So, and you can go on in the interview. He goes on to say about that play. He goes back, go back and look, and you can see it. It was my team. Why are you telling me to take the ball out on a game-tying shot? It wasn't even a game-winning shot. Why are you trying to let him be the hero? He ain't the leader of this team. No. You're trying to make him a hero to hit that shot. If he misses, he's playing with house money. He's playing with what I earned here. I've been earning this from Michael Jordan for years, and he gets the last shot, and I'm supposed to step aside and let Kukoc get in there? So, by that logic, then, I guess Michael Jordan should have been really, really calling out Phil Jackson for being also very racist because of Paxton taking the game-winning shot, and then later on Steve Kerr taking the game-winning shot. To me, it's reaching, and it's just clearly he's still very, very sensitive about this subject, and maybe Scottie's not happy with how he's been characterized. I mean, I guess it takes a tough man to understand that you're not the best player. You're the second best player on a great team. But this, to me, it feels like the boy who cried wolf, because I don't think anyone has ever come out and said anything. I mean, Phil Jackson was a Buddhist. I mean, my God, if there's anybody who believes in like equality and peace, I mean, come on. It doesn't fit, and it feels wrong. It feels like injustice.
Absolutely. It's a completely unfair to Phil. It's completely reasonable play to have Scottie Pippen inbounds the ball to Tony Kukoc. And honestly, this is a team game, right? You're supposed to be happy that you guys won, and you're sitting up here so upset that you take yourself off the floor because you're not getting the last shot. Are you kidding me? That's so weak. Can you imagine like a high school player doing that? Everyone would be ripping him apart. Like it's completely kind of just an injustice. Not just what I'm saying. That play itself, to me, is like a violation of team sports. Yeah. Like, you take yourself off the floor because you don't get your way. Are you kidding me?
Right, and by doing so, you're actually taking away your own, the attention that you would normally be getting, and you're making the shot even harder. So you're cutting off your nose to spite your face, essentially, and you're putting your own sense of pride over the team potentially trying to win the game, and that's that is criminal in the world of sports. So
absolutely,
I don't know. I
got no sympathy here.
Yeah, I didn't like it. It was not cool, and I hope that Scottie comes around, because and the other thing is, that label. If somebody throws that out at you, it's hard to shake in this day and age. It's just I just really, really was like, come on, Scott, you're better than that, man. That's not okay. So, all right, that's enough of that. We're gonna get back to more fun things to talk about. But we have to take a break. Coming up in a little while, we have our top 50 players from PFF. We're going to kind of give some opinion on that article for our NFL fix. But coming up next, we have to get into the actual games going on in the NBA, the conference finals. So we'll talk about Atlanta versus the Bucks and Phoenix taking on the Clippers and more. So stick around. This is the Benchwarmers Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmers Podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmers Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you're sick with COVID-19 or think you might have it, take steps to help protect other people from getting sick. Stay home except to get medical care. Call the doctor before visiting. Separate yourself from others who live with you. Wear a cloth face covering to protect others. Cover your coughs and sneezes with a tissue and clean your hands right away. Avoid sharing items with other people in your home. This includes things like towels and bedding. Be sure dishes are washed in hot water or the dishwasher before anyone else uses them. Stay aware of how you feel. If you start to have difficulty breathing or if you're worried about your health, call your doctor. For more tips, visit cdc.gov.
Welcome back to the Benchwarmers Podcast, where being all talk is actually a good thing. Now, back to the action. Or talk, I guess.
Welcome back to the program, everyone. I am still Lou Ruggieri. That is still Jose Ortiz. And this is still the Benchwarmers Podcast. Follow us along iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcast, or if you're listening, you found us, so keep listening there and tell some friends. You can be friends with us on Facebook, or YouTube, Instagram, at the Benchwarmers Podcast, or at the BW Pod on Twitter, or go to thebenchwarmers.com, Benchwarmers with a Z, for all things Benchwarmers related. This is Season 2, Episode 10. If you're keeping score at home, show number 60. We are going to just keep counting forever. We touched on a little bit in the beginning of the show, NBA Olympic team, the NBA draft lottery, Scottie Pippen's article in GQ, where he sort of insinuated Phil Jackson was a bit of a racist. Very interesting things there. Coming up a little bit, NFL fix. PFF has their top 50 players article that are right now, instead, not just all time, but going into the 2021 season. So we have some thoughts about that. But now, Jose, it's time to get into actual games in the NBA that are happening. I figure we'll start with the Hawks versus the Bucks. The Bucks are up 2-1 after a pretty convincing win. It looked they were down early in game 3. I'm so bad at math. Game 3, they were down by 15 early on, and the Bucks battled back thanks in no small part to Chris Middleton, who had 20 points in the fourth quarter. He ended up with he tied a career high with 38 points, which is pretty amazing. 11 rebounds, 7 assists. Giannis, just being Giannis, 33 points. I thought it was funny that everyone made a big deal about Chris Middleton getting 38 points, and just Giannis has just the quietest 33 points I think I've ever seen in an NBA game. Jrue Holiday, not great, 6 points. Not top flight play from one of your top flight players. And Trae Young hurt his ankle in the beginning in the third quarter, which I think affected the Hawks tremendously. And it feels like the Cinderella story is coming to a very abrupt close for the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, after Trae Young went off for 48 in Game 1, I kind of was like, well, wait a minute. Maybe I've underestimated these Hawks, but the Bucks have done a pretty good job of containing him since there, and I'm starting to feel more confident in Milwaukee. And what makes it, Giannis doesn't have to be otherworldly for them to beat the Hawks, and it feels like Trae Young does have to be otherworldly for them to beat the Bucks. You see Chris Middleton, like you said, getting the 38 in Game 3. Game 2, there were contributions from all over the team. I think Giannis only had 25 in that game. It's just Milwaukee just has too many weapons, too much for Atlanta. Atlanta feels like they're one of these other teams in the NBA who are 1 or 2 players short right now. I do expect the Hawks to take at least one more game, assuming Trae Young is going to be healthy. But this series to me belongs to Milwaukee, and I'm starting to kind of feel like I'm starting to turn the corner a little bit on Giannis. I think in this offseason, we were somewhat questioning where he should be ranked in the NBA as far as, top 10, top 5. Mm-hmm. I think he's put himself back into the top 5 for me. Just off the top of my head, I'd have to sit down and really write it down, but he kind of has that feel again to me, where it's just like you said, he just does what Giannis does, goes out and scores 33 points, and that is kind of what he does. 30 points, 10 rebounds. Kind of what he does all the time. Yeah.
And I think that, the Bucks are probably the healthiest team in the playoffs right now. And I think that should be reason enough why they should make the finals, I think. And the other thing is with the Hawks, just watching them on the floor, Giannis is bigger than everyone on the Hawks. It's Clint Capella is close, but Giannis just looks bigger and stronger. And by and large, size definitely goes to the advantage of the Bucks. They're Brook Lopez, even Chris Middleton's a big dude. They have size all around. And by comparison, the Hawks just kind of look small. Trae Young obviously being the poster child for tiny dudes in the league, but I think that the Bucks are kind of getting into that rhythm. I think Budenholzer's kind of figured out, like, oh wait, we can just go inside on them, and they can't do a single thing about them. I heard a stat, I forgot to write it down, but points in the paint, the Bucks are, I think there's something like 71 points over the Hawks in the paint for the series so far, and that's not terribly surprising, but it's good to see that them actually using their strengths for a change instead of trying to keep up with shooting threes like Trae Young, even though they can be a good three-point shooting team sometimes. But the one thing I noticed is that it seems like, while everyone focuses on Giannis, it seems like Chris Middleton is the X factor for the Bucks, because we've talked a lot about him over the course of the season. He's been an all-star. He made the Olympic team, so obviously he's a good player. But I feel like his consistency isn't always there. It feels like he kind of gets hot and cold. He runs hot and cold, and when he's hot, the Bucks, then they have that second superstar that defenses have to account for, and all of a sudden they seem like they win every time he plays well.
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to come back to something you said about the three-point shooting. I really think that the Hawks need to take a look at some of their shot selections. They're just firing away at three like all the time. It feels like it's just every time someone's launching a three. You saw Trae Young hit a three-point shot from the logo, and it's like, okay, that's great. Why are you shooting from there? Yeah. Like, why are you taking that shot? You can get to anywhere in the basket. You have probably the best floater in the game. Why are you jacking up threes from all over the place? And I feel like their team in general kind of falls in love with the 3-point shot. When it's falling, they're a tough team, but when they're not, they're not that good. And if you're going to have an injured Trae Young and you're going to be jacking up bad threes, this series is going to be over quickly.
Yeah, and Trae Young, I mean, he still managed to get 35 points, after twisting his ankle and being out for a little while. But he only shot basically 50% from the floor, which is not great. I mean, he's a volume shooter. He doesn't, his shot selection, by comparison to like a guy like Kevin Durant, I mean, it just seems like he's more like Allen Iverson-esque, where it's just you just keep shooting. And his, like you said, shot selection is not the best at times. And maybe that's youth, maybe that's desperation, who knows? But it seems like something that Nate McMillan should focus on in the offseason at least. I don't see the Hawks coming back. I don't. I think Game 1 was a bit of an anomaly. We saw what happened. Game 2, the Milwaukee basically blew out Atlanta. And it seems like they're pretty in control of this series. And I don't think they're going to relinquish it to a team like the Hawks.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Moving on to the other side, Phoenix is is actually trying to close out the Clippers as we speak in Game 5. Kawhi Leonard out again, and I wonder if the Clippers manage to stretch this to maybe 6 or 7 games. I wonder if we're even going to see Kawhi at all, and it's a shame, but it just seems like this season, above all, has proven that injuries are part of the game, and it's kind of what makes special things happen sometimes. And we saw the Raptors, with Kawhi Leonard on the other side of that, where they were the benefactors of injuries to the Warriors.
Yeah, that's right.
And now it's the other way around. And Paul George has been, I feel like he's cooled off a bit. He started off really strong in this playoffs. He missed a couple big shots early on in this series. His 2 free throws in that crazy Val-Oop game, and he's okay. I think the Clippers, they need Kawhi. I mean, that goes without saying. But they have a bunch of good players, but they don't really have a great player. And Paul George is great at times, but he's not Kawhi great.
Yeah, if you take the best player off of any team in the NBA, they're going to be a much worse team and a much different team. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing in this series. The Clippers without Kawhi Leonard, they might not even be a playoff team in the Western Conference. Like if you just started the season and Kawhi Leonard was off the team and they're going with the roster they have right now, I'm not convinced they make the playoffs. So that's how good and how valuable a healthy Kawhi Leonard is to that team. And here they are in the Western Conference down 3-1, and it's clear to me that they're overmatched. As much as I want to go and criticize Paul George for going 5 for 20 in Game 4, shooting 1 for 9 from 3, this is kind of who he is. He's not an efficient player. He's never been. He's a career 43% shooter, and it's like you said, if he gets hot, yeah, fine, he can go off for 30-something points, maybe 40 if he gets really hot, but for the most part, this is who he is. He's going to be in the high teens, low to mid 20s, going to shoot probably below 45%, and going to need someone else to come in and have a good game for them to win. He's not a guy who can carry a team. Certainly not at this point in his career.
Yeah, and there's a Game 4. Marcus Morris was the leading scorer with 20 points. Paul George had 11. So it's just, it's a team. I mean, I will say that a couple of the role players for the Clippers, Marcus Morris being one of them, Reggie Jackson being another one, Man occasionally, he had that good game earlier in the playoffs, but
yeah.
They've stepped up occasionally, and it is good to see, but they clearly need their leader back. And I do hope that, I hate to see anybody get injured, but it just seems like without Kawhi, the Clippers don't really, they're just putting off the inevitable over a team with like the Suns that are just up from top to bottom. I mean, they're just great.
Yeah, and I mean, we can get into this in the offseason, but I wonder about Kawhi's ability to stay healthy long term. Just feels like maybe his body's starting to give up on him a little bit. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm overstating that, but just the load management over the last few years, and to see this happen, it's just once again on a non-contact injury. But I want to focus a little bit on the Suns. It's clear to me that it's going to be Bucks versus Suns in the finals, just like everyone predicted in the offseason. And I think the Suns are clearly the most complete team in the NBA. I think the Suns are going to win the championship. Devin Booker can drop 50 at any point in any game. He can just drop. That's how good he is. He can drop 50 on you. Chris Paul, he's like putting on a fundamentals clinic. Like if you're a coach of a youth basketball team, you just really want them to just watch Chris Paul. He doesn't turn the ball over. He hits his free throws. He finds his open players. He doesn't really take bad shots either. And he's pretty versatile in his offensive game. And do you realize that DeAndre Ayton is shooting nearly 71% from the field this postseason? 71%. They have such a balanced offense. They don't fall in love with three-pointers. I love everything I'm seeing the Suns doing right now.
Yeah, and I think that, Devin Booker, although since Patrick Beverley headbutted him and broke his nose, it seems like he's cooled off a little bit. Obviously, playing with that mask. I don't know if you've ever played with a mask, but it's not. I can't imagine it being very.
It's like, I'll punch you in the face. You won't play that well now. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, and and having a broken nose. I mean, just playing with a broken nose is. I mean, that's rough. So I wonder if he's going to be. I mean, maybe if the finals, depending on how long this series goes and how long the Bucks series goes, maybe he'll heal up enough to kind of get back to form. Chris Paul, I think Chris Paul has benefited a lot. It's sort of this weird kind of symbiotic relationship where, Cam Payne has been a great story and a great substitute for Chris Paul, as well as can be expected anyway, like to spell him a little bit to kind of keep him fresh. Payne has certainly stepped up and been a great contributor. And then, like you said, DeAndre Ayton is with Chris Paul there. It feels like Chris Paul is magnifying everything that DeAndre Ayton can be. And it's just he's following the leader, and Chris Paul is a good leader. And like you said, the fundamentals are the thing. Just watching that series, Chris Paul can't really jump that high. He's not really that fast. He doesn't have, an unbelievable Iverson-esque first step, but he just makes good decisions. He makes that pass that you need. I've seen him take more just kind of walk up mid-range jumpers where, people aren't really, it's like they look like they're expecting him to either make a break for the rim or just not shoot. And he'll just walk inside the 3-point line and just pull up for a mid-range jumper and nail it. And it looks so simple. And you're like, well, how come he just keeps doing that. And it's consistent. And I think that he's really going to be something. I don't know. In the finals, I don't think the moment's going to be too big for him, presuming that the Suns win. And going under that assumption, if the Suns and the Bucks meet in the finals, I will say that I'm going to be very happy watching those games, because whether it's Chris Paul or Giannis, whoever wins a ring, I'm going to feel very good about seeing them win.
It'll be nice to see someone new break through. It really would be nice to see someone new break through, kind of add a new championship pedigree, I guess, to the NBA. And it kind of changed the landscape a little bit of how we feel about teams in the NBA and kind of the pecking order. I think it's what we're seeing right now is great for the NBA.
Yeah, and I think, Chris Paul, if he gets a ring, I feel like he's almost like a Drew Brees type player, where if he gets a ring, it's going to just validate all of his stats are going to come and be magnified that much more. Well, Giannis feels kind of like, I don't know, maybe Lamar Jackson, where, it's almost like he has this talent and this potential and he hasn't been living up to it. And he's been taking some scrutiny. He's been scrutinized a bit, and, he's a 2-time MVP. So it would be nice to see him kind of be able to get that monkey off his back and just say, okay, well, yeah, I did it.
Yeah, if Giannis wins the championship this year, he's going to be basically officially called the best player in the game. That's how it works in the NBA, right? If you have his track record winning the 2 championships, the 2 MVPs. If he wins the final, especially if he gets Finals MVP, that's going to be the talk. He's the best player in the game. Move over LeBron. Move over Durant. It's Giannis's league now. If Chris Paul wins, then now the discussion starts on where does he rank all time? Like that's where we are with these guys. That's what happens with the legacies in this championship. Where I'm rooting for Chris Paul because I feel like, I mean, in theory, not in theory, in actuality, Giannis has more time to win one. So I'm really rooting for Chris Paul.
Yeah, I would still say Kevin Durant would be the best player, even if Giannis does win. But the argument gets stronger for Giannis, for sure.
Yep.
And especially depending on how he plays in the finals, because most of the world's going to be watching. So that'll change public perception of him intensely. But we'll see. I mean, it's still going. Obviously, it looks like the Clippers might eke out another game, so this series might keep going. But we'll keep an eye on it. It's exciting. Whoever wins, I mean, I think it's going to be a good finals, no matter who ends up winning. Even though I think the Bucks Suns is looking like the favorite and the best matchup so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that'll do it for NBA for now. So we're going to take a break. Come back. It's time for NFL football fix. So we're going to switch gears and get some NFL talk in. PFF has ranked the 50 best players in the NFL right now, 1 through 50, and we're going to talk a little about some of those players right after this, so stick around. This is the Benchwarmerz Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmerz Podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmerz Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you think or know you had COVID-19, you can be around others after 10 days since symptoms first appeared, and after 24 hours with no fever without fever-reducing medication, and after other symptoms have improved. If you have tested positive for COVID-19 and you had no symptoms, you can be around others 10 days after you got tested for COVID-19. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/coronavirus.
And now back to the Benchwarmerz Podcast with Lou and Jose.
Welcome back to the program, everyone. I am Lou Ruggieri. That is Jose Ortiz, and this is the Benchwarmerz Podcast. Show flying by so far. This is Season 2, Episode 10. You can go back and listen to all of our prior shows on either the iHeartRadio podcasting app, Amazon Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And tell your friends. We try hard, so we'd like the word to get out that we take the show pretty seriously, so hopefully it's a good show to talk about. A lot of NBA talk in the first couple segments of the show. The Olympic team, the draft, Scottie Pippen with his inflammatory comments about Phil Jackson. The conference finals obviously going on in the NBA. The Bucks in Atlanta, Phoenix going for the closeout against the Clippers. But now it is time for, just like every week, even in the offseason, we have to talk football because we just miss it, honestly. And there's not a lot going on in the NFL this week, but PFF, thankfully, has given us something to discuss a bit. They put out an article on PFF.com, the 50 best players in the NFL right now. Obviously, we're not going to go through all 50 players because we don't work for PFF, so we don't need to give them that much publicity. But we wanted to bounce around a little bit. I think it's worth noting that the rankings they did they're not based on positional scarcity. So obviously, if they were, basically 1 through 32 would be quarterbacks, and then it'd be 18 other guys. But the positional value is not a thing here, so they kind of gave everyone equal footing. And they didn't really get into if these are rankings based on kind of cumulative careers up to this point and going forward. It just seems like it's going into the next season where players are right now.
That sounds right.
Yeah. So I'll list off the top 10, and then from there we can kind of dance around a little bit. Number 1 was Aaron Donald. Number 2, Patrick Mahomes. Number 3, Travis Kelce. Number 4, Quentin Nelson, the guard for the Colts. Number 5, Devontae Adams of the Packers. Number 6, Khalil Mack of the Bears. 7 was a guy you might have heard of, Tom Brady. 8th, Bobby Wagner, the linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. 9th, George Kittle from your San Francisco 49ers, Jose. And then 10th, Mr. Aaron Rodgers himself. So out of the top 10, I mean, any big surprises here?
I think George Kittle in the top 10. I mean, I love George Kittle. I'm a 49ers fan, and even if I wasn't a 49ers fan, I'd love George Kittle. But for a guy who basically missed the entire year last season, I don't know. It's a lot of players who like missed the season last year. It seems weird for them to be in the top 10. George, like I know that it's supposed to be equal footing, but George Kittle really better than Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. That seems. I don't think I would say that, even if it was flat-footed, level ground. Other than that, I mean, I don't know. We did our top wide receivers a couple weeks ago, and Devontae Adams is number 2 on our list, and in this list, Tyreek Hill, who was number 1 for us, isn't in the top 10. So that also seems off too, because you can't tell me. I mean, I guess Devontae Adams benefits from Aaron Rodgers the same way Tyreek Hill benefits from Patrick Mahomes, but I don't know, man. If I have to pick who I'm going to cover, I'll cover Devontae Adams any day of the week instead of covering Tyreek Hill any day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron Donald, as far as being, based on who his competition is, I mean, Aaron Donald should be number 1. I think he's just the most destructive force in NFL defenses right now. Patrick Mahomes, fine. I was a little surprised by Travis Kelce, number 3. And I get that he's basically a matchup nightmare, but just like you were saying, I mean, I think Tyreek Hill scares me a lot more than Travis Kelce. I mean, it's, Travis Kelce's going to get, 10 catches for 100 yards, but Tyreek Hill can get 250 yards if you don't cover him, as the Dolphins found out last season. And it just, I don't know. I wasn't crazy about Kelce being where he is. And then obviously with, Devontae Adams, I agree with you. I would rather have Tyreek Hill over Devontae Adams. And then Bobby Wagner was the only one at 8 that I was kind of surprised by. Where, I mean, I get he's a great linebacker. He's been around forever. But, last season, the season before, he only had 3 sacks a year. He's got 138 combined tackles last season. So pretty good.
Pretty
but
high.
It just, I don't know. As far as a game changer, I mean, the Seahawks defense wasn't. I mean, they started off really bad last season and they got better, but I don't know if I'd have him 8th, honestly. I really.
I mean, he does have 5 consecutive All-Pro selections, so
that's pretty good.
First team All-Pro. I'm sorry, 5 consecutive first team All-Pro. So he's clearly among the best 2 or 3 linebackers in the game. It does seem high. But I guess the linebacker position. I mean, that's right. It's not even based on a position. So yeah, I mean, just based on, hey, this guy is playing his position better than other guys. So I guess that's how they're doing it. But yeah, I agree. Bobby Wagner, another guy who stood out to me, and we already, I hate to keep picking on 49ers because I love my 49ers, but Nick Bosa at what do they have him at 20? What I just saw him. Sorry, Nick Bosa at 27. It just seems, once again, it was like the guy had 1 season, then he got hurt last year and didn't play at all. He's number 27 on the list. That seems, it's just very presumptive to me, or presumptuous.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. He was a great rookie player. He broke the rookie record for pressures and all this stuff, but we don't even know if the guy's fully healthy right now. So it's hard.
Yeah, that was interesting. I think Derrick Henry at 12 surprised me a little bit, because if you're talking about value to a team, I mean, I don't know that there's many people more valuable to their team than Derrick Henry. And, especially if you're taking positional scarcity away from it. I mean, Derrick Henry, 2,000 yards last season. I mean, he is as unstoppable a running back as you can find, and that just, I thought maybe he could be a little higher.
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins at 17, I think is questionable, especially with Tyreek Hill at 18. I mean, I think last season it was pretty clear that Tyreek Hill was far more dangerous than DeAndre Hopkins was. So that seems, that made me scratch my head a little bit. Yeah. I don't know. I was very curious about DeAndre Hopkins being. I
mean, DeAndre Hopkins is a good player. I think that this, what you and I were talking, that maybe there's something like carrying previous seasons with him in his evaluation, right? Where it's like, okay, he was on a new team. He still had a great year, but he does carry all those other years. But speaking of wide receivers though, how on earth is Julio Jones ranked ahead of Nick Chubb, A.J. Brown, and Alvin Kamara. And Josh Allen. I'm sorry. It just doesn't make any sense to me. They couldn't get a first-round pick for this guy, and he's ranked higher than players who would almost definitely get a first-round pick in a trade.
Yeah, even Stephon Diggs was 45.
Yeah.
He had a much better year than Julio did.
Stephon Diggs is not better than Julio Jones. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. I mean, that's...
Michael Thomas, same thing, at 44.
I mean, Michael Thomas, I guess, going into next season, I would say has a question mark just because of Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. But then, I mean, Ryan Tannehill is not exactly... I mean, he's good, but he's not great. So it's just, it is interesting. A.J. Brown, same thing. I mean, I think A.J. Brown's more of a threat than Julio Jones is on that team going into next season.
No question about that, definitely.
And then my own personal lament on this is that, of course, number 50 on PFF's top 50 players.
I knew it.
My very own Dak Prescott for my Dallas Cowboys. And I mean, it's no secret that I am not super high on Dak, and I do not think that he belongs on this list. I don't know how you're ranking it. I don't know what you're looking for, but I think if you replace Dak Prescott with any number of quarterbacks, they could be just as productive in that offense with those skill position players. So
it looked like that last season. I will say it did not look like that last season.
I mean, Andy Dalton and
who's about to be a starter in the NFL.
Well, but for the Bears, so that's
okay. You know, they're basically saying he's the sixth best quarterback in the NFL. That's basically what they're saying. If you look at this, they're saying he's the number 6 quarterback in the NFL. In that sense, I don't agree with that. I think he's probably closer to like 9 or 10, something like that. So,
yeah, I don't know. I just if you're taking positional value out of it, I just don't think that Dak belongs on this list. I think he got on there just because he happens to be the Cowboys quarterback, truthfully. But
no, I mean that's not fair too. Like he has great numbers. You want to say that he wouldn't have those great numbers if he wasn't on a bad team? It's not like He's not like this guy. It's not like he had 2,500 yards a couple of years ago. Like he had 4,900 yards and like 31 touchdowns a couple of years ago. Then he got hurt last year. Like his first 4 seasons in the NFL are historically good. Now you can say he was on good teams, but yeah, that's so was Patrick Mahomes on a good team. Would he have had the same numbers if he was drafted to the Jets? Of course not. That's part of the equation when you have a quarterback and a position player. If you want to say he's not top 50, that's fine, but I don't think he's there because he's if Andy Dalton's the starting quarterback, I don't think they're sticking him at 50 here.
No, because I mean that's just completely unreasonable. But Justin Herbert, Matt Stafford, who else?
I agree that Matthew Stafford should probably
Murray,
be there.
I think would probably be ahead of him. Lamar Jackson.
Jackson, yeah, that's fair.
It's tough. It's just tough for me to look at him and go, yeah, no, definitely.
And that's why we agree. I think that's that's the issue. He's not the number 6. Like if they had somehow listed the other 9 other quarterbacks before him and he was at 50, I could get on board. But the fact that he's basically ranked the number 6 quarterback in the NFL, I'm not on board with that.
Yeah, it just struck me as odd, especially because Josh Allen is number 40.
Yeah.
If you're going to put Dak at 50, Josh Allen should be, top 10. And it's just very, very questionable. I'm not sure. I'd like to find some more
I cannot wait until Dak Prescott comes out this season and throws 4,700 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, takes the Cowboys to the second round of the playoffs and loses probably because, the Bucs are better and the Packers are better, and then has a great season, and then you can finally say, Jose, you were right. Dak Prescott is a good quarterback.
Well, when you wake up from that dream, you'll find out the Cowboys are probably not going to win the division, and they're probably going to miss the playoffs again because of very piss poor coaching and subpar play from very high status players.
Fair enough. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think the Rams. I think are my dark horse going into.
I forgot about the Rams. No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I've been a Matt Stafford fan since forever. I think his talent is unbelievable, and I'm excited to see what he can do with a real coach and more than just one good player to throw to.
Be a nice no excuses year for Matt Stafford, right? Like, it's kind of like, okay, although, I mean, Calvin Johnson is better than any player on that team, but
definitely,
you basically, outside of Calvin Johnson, you've basically had no wide receiver help, very little,
and bad coaching. I mean, the entire 5-year run was Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson playing pitch and catch. That was it. Just, hey, go run and I'll throw it to you and you catch it, and then we'll try to win that way.
Definitely the ultimate no for that too. Actually, there's a lot of no excuse. I mean, that sounds like a good topic for next week of no excuse players. But Matthew Stafford and Dak Prescott probably at the top of the list of no excuses this year.
Barring injury, I guess, of course. But that would be unfortunate. But all right. So that's the list. You can go to pff.com and see the whole list in its entirety and kind of get your own view on it. It's a little interesting. I mean, it certainly got us talking, so I guess it did what it was supposed to do. You can find more similarly interesting articles on our own website, thebenchwarmers.com. They're not as highly publicized, but we're working on that. We have I think our featured article right now is still up as the second-tier NFL quarterbacks that we ranked. You can go check that out. It's a lot of fun, actually. The aforementioned Matt Stafford is the
number one,
the featured picture right there. So tie that all together. Outside of that, you can go and listen to all of our shows before this: iHeartRadio podcasting, Amazon podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us along Facebook, YouTube, Instagram at the Benchwarmers Podcast, at the BW Pod on Twitter, and we will keep you informed of all things Benchwarmers. So that's going to do it. Season 2, Episode 10 in the books. For Jose Ortiz, I'm Lou Ruggieri, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.